What is up, you guys? Welcome back to the Hurdle Podcast. We're doing something different. Look, we've been having basketball and a little bit of baseball here and there. But the staple of this channel has always been football. I think Bailey will agree, yes?
Absolutely.
So we've been kind of concocting some ideas to do like off-season stuff just because not much is happening right now. I mean, you haven't seen me do an Instagram reel in probably over a month just because nothing's really happened. So we're going to start this new series that we decided to call the 2000's. So pretty much the premise is we were both born in 2002, and we're going to just kind of rank players by position, both collegiately and in the NFL, of who we think is the best that we've seen play. Obviously, like a guy that won't be on this list, we're doing college today. Peyton Manning's not going to be on that list because he did not play in the 2000's in college. He definitely would have been on our list, but he does not count in the way we have decided to do this. So pretty much list 1 through 10. Another thing that sparked this was we saw an ESPN list and said, man, that list is terrible. So we wanted to do our own little spin on it. So Bailey, do you want to go ahead and start? You can go ahead and give us your 10.
Okay, yeah. So we're
Number
going
10.
10 to 1, alternating between me and Logan. My number 10, I don't know if I was a huge fan growing up personally, because I was actually a big Sooner fan, but and I still kind of am, but I'm going Kellen Moore here. 54-3 is damn near untouchable, and I will never forget the Boise State Oklahoma Bowl game with the
Fiesta
Statue of
Bowl.
Liberty play. And was it the hook and ladder that even forced overtime, and then having the Statue of Liberty? Was it a touchdown or a 2-point conversion? Because I remember they had to go for two, or was it both?
I think it was both. They got the touchdown
Yeah.
off the hook and ladder, and then the 2-point
Mhm.
conversion was the Statue of Liberty.
Yeah. So, um, I know the Mountain West was like a little weaker back then. Me and Logan were talking about that before a little bit, just like with the competition he was playing. But the record stands for itself. He took Boise State to heights that football program has never reached and will probably never reach really again. So, just watching him play on the blue turf as a kid, it was nostalgic for me, and I really wanted to have him on this list. So I thought 10 was the right spot for him. I guess we could do like some honorable mentions too.
Yeah,
Um,
sure.
I don't have RG3 on my list. He's an honorable mention for me. Um, Man, Kyler is an honorable mention for me. Trevor Lawrence was an honorable mention for me, and Deshaun Watson was another one for me. So those were kind of like my four that I was trading back and forth between for 10, but I decided to go with Kellen Moore. I know no national championships, which is something that Watson and Lawrence have. And you could definitely say they played in a tougher era of college football, but I went for the more nostalgic pick there.
The fun pick. This is what
Yeah.
this is what this whole series is about. It's our opinion, what we saw, what we remember. Because
Mhm.
we were talking about this the other night when we got done recording the NBA one. The players we were mentioning of like remembering, like Terrell Pryor at TCU, like those were some special.
Trayvon
Oh,
Boykin.
Trayvon Boykin, yeah, sorry,
Yeah.
but the Corey Coleman at Baylor
Josh
with Bryce
Dodson.
Petty, yeah, Josh Dotson. I'm really not hitting them good tonight. I told you we should have just hit record the other night. I'm just gone with it. Well, just nostalgic players. Fine, I'll get one right. Alex Smith at Utah, just because I was in Utah when that was going on and ends up being the number one pick. I guess I'll start with my honorable mentions. Both Clemson quarterbacks, Watson and Lawrence. They were very hard to not put on this list. I think one for me was Lamar. His Heisman season was something we'll never see again, I don't think. Just based on the hype, and he was playing at Louisville, who was just coming off having Teddy Bridgewater. And then I guess to throw another fun one in, I'll go Colt McCoy. That Colt McCoy Texas team was so fun to watch. And granted, he didn't really do anything in the NFL, but Colt McCoy at Texas was must-watch football for the Big 12, 100%.
And that's the best that football program's been. Like those are the best years that they've had in the past decade, were the Colt McCoy years, around like the 2007 times when they were
Right
playing
after Vince.
Oklahoma and Tech. Yeah, like right after Vince, they came in with him. He just racked up so many wins for that program, and they really haven't been the same after he left.
Hey, but they've got stacked QB room again, so we're gonna see what
Yep.
happens with Brock Ewers and Arch Manning.
Hmm.
We'll get to my number 10. I went with a more nostalgia one too. And it's gonna be Case Keenum for his time at Houston. You can, if you throw 170 touchdowns plus in your collegiate career, you're making my list because that shows that's the beginning of the air raid offense that we all know and love right now. I think without Case Keenum, you don't get a Joe Burrow year that he had the 60 touchdowns. I don't think you get the insane arm talent and cannon of a Patrick Mahomes because that's the same offense Pat Mahomes was running. So
Hmm.
I think having Case Keenum, kind of like with Bailey, having Kellen Moore as 10, I think Case Keenum for me is just so nostalgic. Those Houston teams, like, same kind of deal, will never be that relevant again, I don't think. Um, and Case Keenum was a big part of that.
Yeah, I think that's a great selection. I love Case Keenum as a Vikings fan, the Minneapolis Miracle and all that. But yeah, the numbers, granted again like with the competition stuff, a little on the weaker side, but the numbers are just they're so outrageous that it's almost like, man, I don't even know if I could do that against like seventh graders. Like he was just putting up ridiculous numbers on still D1 level college teams, and I think there's something to say for that.
Hell yeah,
Yeah.
give him 9.
My number nine um, was actually number one on ESPN's list. I'm going Baker Mayfield on mine. Um, yes, he has a Heisman. Yes, he led Oklahoma to two college football playoffs. Yes, he has some, of course, like memorable moments for Oklahoma planting the flag. Was that against Texas?
It was Ohio State.
Oh, Ohio State, yes. Planting the flag right in the middle of there. In Columbus, if I remember correctly. Just some of the throws he was making on the run in that Lincoln Riley offense. He had weapons all over the place those years. Of course, he had Lamb. D.D. Westbrook was there. The those offenses were absolutely stacked to the rafters. There's no doubt about. I think they had Joe Mixon too. Um, so yeah, those teams, those Lincoln Riley offenses, they're made to put up numbers. Like you look at the past few years, you got Kyler in there, who's an honorable mention for me. I thought about throwing Jalen Hurts on this list for a split second, um, because he won a Heisman there. Sam Bradford, all these Oklahoma quarterbacks that you can think about in these explosive offenses, but Baker was the one that stood out to me.
Well, yeah, and even like a Caleb Williams who was there
Yep.
and now is the USC quarterback. Uh, they produce quality quarterbacks, specifically number one picks, it feels like, and it feels like that trend will continue next year if all things go kind
Hmm.
of according to plan. For me, my number 9, I think, is another guy that I wouldn't say changed the game, but like he reminded us of it. And I'm gonna go Braxton Miller, quarterback, Ohio State. The spin move against Virginia Tech and how broken he was in the college football video games is something I will never forget. You always wanted to play as Ohio State, and you always wanted to run with Braxton Miller. And it's not even that he could just run good; he had a cannon of an arm. He was very accurate. He took, I can't remember what kind of weapons he had, but it doesn't even, I think, compared to like what we've seen recently out of Ohio State receivers. Like the fact that what we had Olave, Wilson, and Jigba, Michael
Michael
Thomas has
Tom,
been
Terry
there.
McLaurin.
Like Ohio State has been stacked at receiver of late, and I really cannot recall a guy that Braxton Miller really had that was a dominant, like a dog at receiver. So that's why I put him at 9. Again, that Virginia Tech spin move at VTech the opening week, I think like the 14 season or 15 season, one of the nastiest plays you'll ever. The memes back then when memes were fire, oh my god, those memes were outstanding. Literally B button. Anytime you spun on someone anywhere, B button, B button. Or for my case, circle, circle. But yeah, that's why I have Braxton Miller at 9.
Yeah. Um, yeah, just this era of college football is so nostalgic for me. Um, think of like I also thought about throwing Pat White on the list out of West Virginia. Um, just going back, getting back to go back and like watch highlight tapes of these guys on YouTube just brings back like so many memories. That's kind of like a little bit of prep I did for this. And I almost like ranked them based on their highlight tapes, you could say too. Just like triggered memories, right? And of course, that Braxton one against Virginia Tech is up there. So yeah, I don't hate the pick at all. And it was just such a different type of offense that they were running with Urban there, having Urban come off those Florida teams with Tebow, Aaron Hernandez, the Pouncey twins, those guys, winning two national championships there, and then going to Ohio State and just running a completely different style of offense, it seemed like, with Braxton, where you're going way more elusive. It was still the quarterback run game, of course, but it was just a different feel, and Braxton was a huge part of that.
Like a kind of a smaller, not as big Tebow at times.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, definitely. So my eight, we're gonna head out west. I'm going Andrew Luck out of Stanford. Um, I think the toughest part about this list for me was leaving NFL bias out of it. Because it's like, man, am I really gonna take? I'm not gonna like, man, would I really take? I guess my list doesn't compare. I don't want to spoil the rest of the list later, but there's definitely some options coming up. It's like, man, would I really take that guy over that guy in a list? And it just felt weird, you know
Yeah,
that feeling. But Andrew Luck was just. I think he was the first quarterback prospect that I looked at and said, man, that dude is actually like really special. He just had NFL written all over him, really from the first snap at Stanford. And just those David Shaw teams, I grew up watching those Stanford teams, leading all the way through into Christian McCaffrey, which we're going to do running back lists. McCaffrey is definitely going to be on my list, so we'll get to talk about him too. But those Stanford teams with like Kobe Fleener and Luck, those were teams I grew up on basically out here on the West Coast. I'm from Washington, so yeah, had to have Andrew Luck on the list. He was a must-have for me.
yeah. It's never fun having colleges that we cheer for being in the same conference as an Andrew Luck. He is probably the one quarterback I can remember that had good games against Utah defenses. Like I've told you before, one of my favorite Utah games of all time was when Jared Goff was coming in the year before he was the number one pick, and everyone was hyping up Jared Goff, and Utah's defense forced 5 picks on him, and it's like, okay, that's kind of panning out to be kind of accurate right now. Once he gets really good competition defensively against him, he can't handle the pressure. Andrew Luck's the exact opposite. I've never seen a quarterback have so much pocket presence and
Mhm.
cool under pressure like he was at Stanford. There's a reason he went number one over RG3, and he was just so special to watch. He wasn't, you know, when you have a guy like
He's
RG3 in
not
the same draft
flashy.
class as you, it's complete opposites. It's the most athletic quarterback you've probably ever seen outside of a guy we have later on this list, and a guy that has one of the best arms and, like you said, one of the best NFL caliber, ready to go. Like when he went number one, I was not worried for the Colts, and he kind of proved that. I remember watching his first NFL game. I was so hyped on this guy. First pass is a 75-yard touchdown. First pass of his NFL career is a 75-yard touchdown. And I think that was the moment where I sat there and was like, Andrew Luck's that guy. I mean, I wish he would have played longer, but I
Yeah,
mean,
definitely.
beggars can't be choosers. Andrew Luck is so good. The fact that, I mean, he'll be on my list here in a sec, but the fact that I could name 6 guys better than him is insane.
Yeah, I think the consistency is something that we took for granted with Andrew Luck. Like those couple years in Stanford, granted I don't think they ever won a national championship, but I think they won two Rose Bowls, which is like if
Next
you,
best.
I mean that's where they play. They play in Pasadena basically in Stanford. So, um, those are the games you want to win as a California team. Got to win those. Um, and yeah, just t taking that into the NFL, I think you could say Andrew Luck is one of the most underrated quarterbacks, college and pro, really of all time.
Do you think that's because his career was a little shorter, maybe?
Yeah, yeah, like I just think, especially the NFL part, if he would have played, and he would still be playing right now. If we took like the normal timeline of a superstar quarterback, we're thinking, 12, 14 years probably. Luck would still be going. So, um, just the way he played in Indianapolis, and he retired at the exact like wrong moment because that Colts team was building up and actually being something really nice. They brought in Jonathan Taylor. They were starting to get an offensive line for him. They had Quentin Nelson. Was it Costanzo?
Yeah,
Anthony
Costanzo.
Costanzo. On their left side, they were starting to build up an offensive line for him, but he just took way too many hits in those earlier years. And Jim Irsay kind of did him dirty with that, and the Colts really paid a price for that. So yeah.
Absolutely. Well, let's get to my number 8. We love talking Andrew Luck. My number 8 is RG3. I just the highlight tape speaks for itself. Like I don't think there was a guy again at that time really that was like RG3. Like I mentioned Braxton Miller. It kind of felt like it went from Braxton Miller and kind of leaned into the RG3 era. Again, that's one of the last times I can recall Baylor really being super relevant. I know they were a couple years ago. I think they played in the Cotton Bowl. But really, those RG3 years were some of the best years of Baylor football. I'll never forget the big dude at tight end. That offense was unstoppable when he was in the red zone. RG3 literally just had to dink and duck to him, and he was going to get you 15 plus yards, kind of a deal. And he had great receivers. But it's
Pullman.
yeah, you knew I couldn't think of a name. But I just his ability to run the football is so familiar, like to a Braxton Miller. Like I said, like when you would plug in and play the NCAA games, if you wanted to be Baylor, you were just running with RG3. They made a career mode in the game just for him that you played his career. Like that's how talented he was. And again, if he would have had more help in the NFL and wasn't getting injured as much as he was, I think we talk about that draft class being one of the best for quarterbacks. I think RG3 could have cemented himself as an outstanding NFL quarterback because we saw flashes of it. I mean, I don't want to bring it up, but the game against Minnesota was, I think, his rookie year, right? One of the most incredible performances by a running quarterback I think I've ever seen because they had no business winning that game, and RG3 willed them to a win. So I think that alone, him and Luck would still be playing now, probably. At least Luck would. RG3 might have been just retiring, but we might have seen some of these teams. When you look at it, too, it's like, look how many teams, quarterbacks Washington has gone through since RG3. And look how many quarterbacks the Colts have gone through since Andrew Luck. Granted, now the Colts might have their guy, but it's just like how different the landscape of the NFL could have been if those two stayed healthy and were still on their respective teams.
Yeah, I think with RG3, there wasn't really any particular reason I left him off the list. I kind of just wanted to have the other guys. Um, his throw off the run capabilities and just his ability to play make was the first time I had ever seen anything like that. Him being what was he, 6'1", 6'2",
Yeah.
with that kind of speed and agility, but still being able to huck the ball 50 yards rolling out to the right by being chased down by a D lineman. Um, yeah, he was just such an absurd playmaker. Um, in those Art Briles offenses, and that's really the peak of Baylor football is when they go from him to Bryce Petty and the 61 to 62 to 58 game against TCU, which I remember watching growing up. I think I was like 6. Um, that was such an insane game.
6.
Yeah, what was that?
It was like 2012. We were like 10.
10? But yeah, just yeah. I mean, either way. Just some absurd offenses. They were so much fun to watch. And it's really the last time, and outside of the Oklahoma teams, it's really the last time we've seen the Big 12 be that explosive offensively, and have all these offensive weapons and these downfield guys. And now that Lincoln Riley's left Oklahoma, the Big 12 is almost like the polar opposite from that now.
Yeah, now they get BYU. Ooh.
Okay, so yeah, my list, my bad. 7.
7.
I'm staying out west. I actually have a jersey. I should have wore the jersey. Um, Marcus Mariota, Oregon. Um, these Oregon teams were my teams when I was a kid. These Mariota, DeAnthony, the jerseys were sick. So the
They still
jerseys,
are.
yeah, Oregon will always have some of the best jerseys in college football. Maybe not the best, but some of the best jerseys in college football. And the Oregon jerseys were disgusting. The Kelly Green jerseys were my favorite jerseys. Maybe I'll go get it while you're talking really quick. But um, just the offenses were so explosive. Running those triple options when you had LaMichael James there for a little bit. Of course, DeAnthony Thomas and his absurd speed. And then pairing that with Mariota's ability to use the read option. He was so dominant through the ground and the no huddle. They were really one of the first times I had ever seen any team run no huddle, personally. And you think back, if you go back to the past like NFL years, you think like Jim Kelly and the K gun, with the Buffalo Bills and things like that. But um, they were the first team that really like saw like, man, these guys' they were pushing defenses to the limits, and they were scoring 40, 50 points, it seemed like, on a regular basis,
Oh yeah.
even against good defenses. So, um, Mario is just his ability with his legs, which I think is going to be a big theme on my list. Um, yeah, his ability with his legs, and like with the pro thing, I was saying, like, would I take Mariota above Luck normally? No, but it's just, trying to leave pro bias out of it. But I think this one was an easy one for me. Mariota was definitely a lock to be on my list.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely, I would throw him in an honorable mention. I hated Oregon. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. As a Utes fan, I hated Oregon. I still hate Oregon. Um, but yeah, playing against Marcus Mariota was never fun. I think we got him one time, and it was like a 38-35 win. Like it wasn't anything impressive to write home about. They pretty much dominated us during that time frame of Mariota being there. Again, Mariota is one of the funnest quarterbacks I think I've ever watched. Like you said, the way he can do the read option, and he has a cannon of an arm. He has a
He
great
does.
arm. It's just that never really kind of, I think, was fine tuned in the NFL, and that's maybe why he didn't last as long in the NFL.
Hmm.
But that year that the year him and Jameis got drafted could have gone down as one of the best quarterback classes if those two could have just stayed healthy and ran the course, which is insane to think about. Jameis ain't on our list, but
No.
Jameis was another one that's like, I remember watching them in Notre Dame, man. I remember in my room watching the national championship against Notre Dame, and Jameis throwing that touchdown right at the end. I think it was like a 2-yard out route into the right corner.
Hmm.
And just like those kind of memories are why we wanted to do this. But yeah, definitely Mariota and should be an honorable mention. For me, we kind of already talked about him. I have Andrew Luck at 7. I think we praised Andrew Luck as much as we can. So if you want to hear what I said, we can kind of go back to that. But yeah, I think honestly one of the smartest, best quarterback IQs I've ever seen. I mean, he went to Stanford, so he had to be. But
Hmm.
yeah, again, a career cut too short in the NFL, but the moments we did get in college that led into the NFL were some of the best quarterback play we've seen in a long time.
Yeah. Okay. So my 6, I'm going Lamar Jackson here. Um, like I said, the legs are going to be a huge theme on this, except for really the exception of one guy left on my list. So, um, Lamar had to be here. Granted, you can say, hey, the competition wasn't that great. The ACC is just loaded with explosive offense, and really terrible defense, but Lamar shredded, those through every defense.
The Syracuse hurdle. Oh,
Good God. And it seemed like he was on every Sports Center top 10. Those two Heisman, the one Heisman candidate season and then the one Heisman winning season. He was just, the numbers were absurd. You just see his stat line come across the bottom, be like 285 passing, 236 rushing, 5 touchdowns, no picks. You'd be like, Jesus. Like, wait, what? And it seemed like every drive was born for a highlight. So yeah, Lamar Jackson in the chrome red helmets absolutely had to be here.
ooh, ooh, the Chrome Reds.
Hmm.
Ooh, ooh, chills, baby. That's one of the best helmets in football. My number 6 will be the most, I think, nostalgic pick for me. When this man was throwing to Mike Evans and giving you the business, you knew you were screwed on a Saturday. And that's Johnny Football. I mean, again, like Bailey mentioned, I would never pick Johnny Manziel over Andrew Luck if you base it off NFL career. But I mean, maybe his fan-controlled football league career, that's a different story. But the college Johnny Manziel to Mike Evans connection was some of the best college football you'll get.
Yep.
And they really had that 12th man going down there in College Station. That's really when A&M, I think, was at their highest. And I think that's what people think A&M is going to be eventually here soon with the recruits they're kind of bringing in. But nothing will compare to that Johnny Manziel seasons. It just won't. The fact that Johnny Football wasn't the first quarterback off the board in his draft class, I thought was insane outside of Cam.
Mm-hmm.
He was, I think, would have been the next one, right?
Mm-hmm.
I thought he was better than Blaine Gabbert, kind of a deal.
Yeah.
But Johnny Football, again, you knew, same deal with Lamar. You knew damn well every Saturday Johnny Manziel was going to get SportsCenter top 10 play, and you were going to get the classic, baby. That's all you were going to get. Dollar signs, money, Manziel, man. So that's why he's at number 6 for me.
And was it the Sugar Bowl where he ran for 200 yards?
I think so.
I believe they played in the Sugar Bowl against Florida.
Florida sounds right.
I think so. I'd have to
I'm
go
going to
do my
Google it. Keep
research on
talking.
that. Yeah, but I think he's the first quarterback ever to have 200 passing. He was the first quarterback at the time to have 200 passing, 200 rushing. Some stat line like that. God, I can't put my
Okay,
finger on it now.
so it might have been, they played in the Cotton Bowl
Maybe that's what I
against
was thinking of.
Oklahoma.
Okay.
That sounds right.
Okay.
Maybe they played in the Peach Bowl too. They played Duke in the Peach Bowl.
Yeah, one of the bowl games, I remember him having like 200 in a 200 game. Exactly. So, yeah, like you said, he's basically your Lamar on your list. Johnny Manziel was he was just a phenomenon. He was like he's like the Linsanity of college football, right? He just took over the sports world, it seemed like, for like a 3 month period. There was a period of time where I was more excited to watch Manziel games than I was to watch pro football games. Um, so yeah, Manziel I think is a fantastic pick. 5 for me. I'm going Cam Newton here. I know he's probably higher on most people's list, probably higher on your list. Um,
Slightly.
and that's for good reason. I mean, you have the classic Iron Bowl game against Alabama that he was a part of. Um, who's their coach? Malzahn? Is it Gus Malzahn? Um, and th those battles with Alabama are absolutely classics. The national championship games. Um, really, you could just say the Auburn Alabama games, and the first thing you picture is the Chris Davis Jr. Or the field goal return for a touchdown, and then every single Cam Newton highlight comes after that.
Yep.
He was just so incredible. His size and physicality was something that really college football had never seen from that position, outside of one other, maybe two other guys at the quarterback. And him and Malzahn changed college football. It kind of seemed like for that time period.
Well, especially in the SEC down there, because you had the Bamas, you had the LSU's,
Hmm.
and it just always seemed like there was dogfights every time they played.
Yep.
And like you said, the national championships alone, I, oof, national championship Cam Newton might be the best quarterback ever. Like I'm being like national championship game Cam Newton really showed out and really balled out and made it so that Auburn team could win because I can't really think of anyone real impressive on that Auburn team outside of him.
Hmm.
And it was just the Cam Newton show. It just had to be.
Yep.
All right, my 5. I know this guy's higher on your list. I think I'm pretty sure.
Hmm.
The only reason he's at 5, it was 1 year, and I think we were 3 years old, maybe 2,
Yeah.
around that.
Yeah.
We were very young.
You got drafted in, if it's the guy you think of it, you got drafted in '04.
Yeah, so we were maybe 2,
Hmm.
1.5, and that's Michael Vick.
Yeah. Okay.
Everyone compares every running quarterback ever to Michael Vick for good reason because Michael Vick was the first one. Really, he put Virginia Tech on the map, and that's what people think of when they think of Virginia Tech nowadays. That's all I think about is Michael Vick, and had I thought a great NFL career. Again, we're not throwing those in. I mean, he had his off the field stuff. That's whatever. But I think the stuff at Virginia Tech was some of the best football that you could have watched, and that's what really started this trend of the running quarterback. I mean, you see it now. Like when Lamar was coming out, everyone said next Michael Vick,
Hmm.
and Lamar kind of has shown that he is a great runner, and when he needs to throw it, he can airmail it. He can just put it over a safety over the top and get a 60-yard touchdown like it's nothing. Granted, the accuracies were never there for Vick either. Like it kind of seems like it could be for Lamar right now.
Hmm.
But the way Michael Vick changed the game for all these running quarterbacks, like you said, I feel like a lot of these quarterbacks on here are mobile quarterbacks, and he's
Yeah.
the one that I thought like really started that in college football.
Yeah. This leads perfectly because my four is Vic. Um, I can't have the predecessor in Lamar on this list and not have the originator.
Yep,
Michael Vick was the most electric thing college football has really ever seen. Straight up carried Virginia Tech to a national championship game. Granted, they lost, but he was their workhorse quarterback, running back, bro. He was their entire offense from start to finish. And the only reason they couldn't beat Florida State is because Florida State at that time was probably the most dominant program in college football.
especially
So
defensively.
yeah, defensively they were disgusting. They had that stretch there where they had a couple Heisman winners like Charlie Ward. Um, God, and the oldest Heisman winner ever. Um, before is it Hankey? Chris Hankey? Something like that. He was like 28 years old and won the Heisman. Um,
Sounds like a BYU quarterback. I'm taking shots at BYU today. I have to.
but yeah, Vic was Lamar before Lamar, and he did it better. So I absolutely had to have him on this list, and he's my four.
Yeah, for sure. My four guy we talked about. I think it's Cam Newton. Again, like I said, I think championship Cam Newton's one of the best quarterbacks I've ever watched. Just the way he was able to move at that size, like no one could tackle him. Like even when he got to the NFL, no one could tackle him. No one could tackle Superman. He starts trends. He is a dog. Now, I'll throw the caveat in here. When he was up here at Montana State, he wasn't the greatest of guys. But I mean, if you're gonna get hoarded by people at your brother's college playoff game,
Where they got
I
beat
would,
by 50.
yeah, or they got beat by 50 by our Montana State Bobcats. Um, but no, I don't hold any of that against Cam Newton. I totally get it. But Cam Newton was the most, I think, he was truly a one of one. At his size, he was truly a one on one for his time.
Yeah, definitely. So we might have the same top three. I don't know if we have it in order. My three is Joe Burrow.
As is
Um,
mine.
okay. So let's just do it now. My three is Burrow. My two is Vince Young,
Yep.
and my one is Tim Tebow.
Hell
Um,
yeah, brother.
okay. So we got the same top three. Starting off with Burrow here. That all you need is the one season. The one season is historically the greatest college quarterback season of all time, and I don't think there's any ifs, ands, or buts about it. Broke every major record, it seems like. Every week, it seemed like he was doing something new, doing something innovative, just setting historical records um, in that offense under Coach O. And just the numbers. I mean, the offense is absurd. All 11 guys went to the NFL in some way, shape, or form. Burrow was the one pick. Of course, Jefferson. Of course, Chase the year after.
Clyde
CEH got
Edwards-Helaire.
yeah,
Yeah.
Clyde Edwards-Helaire got drafted. Terrace Marshall Jr., who was their wide receiver three, went at the back end of the first round in the NFL draft.
Thaddeus Moss.
Thaddeus Moss, who was Randy Moss's kid, I think he went in the sixth round to Washington, fifth round to Washington. I don't know if he's still there or not, but um, it seemed like it would just come to down to a drive-by-drive basis, and all the big games. I remember the Alabama game in the regular season, and Chase had four touchdowns, I'm pretty sure. It seemed like no matter who he threw to, they were just unguardable. So maybe like part of it's the weapons, but the other part was Burrow's decision making. I think outside of luck, he's the most pro-ready quarterback I've ever seen. The decision making, just the arm talent, the accuracy, everything, just across the board, and he can move. I think that's the most underrated part about Burrow's game is he's still mobile. It's not like he's a statue in the pocket at all. So There's only more development for him in the NFL, but just from college, it just like on a drive-by-drive basis, no one was ever matching what LSU did in that 2019 season.
Yeah, I totally agree with all that, and I think one of the biggest things for me is I think he has the most swagger I've ever seen out of a college quarterback, and that's saying something because I thought Manziel was going to be the most swagger guy I'd ever seen in college football. Joe Shiesty was just dude, the cigar after the national championship, the way that this dude was written off by Urban Meyer at Ohio State, the story alone is something incredible. Gets drafted by his hometown team and is now leading that team to be one of the best teams in the NFL. Granted, again, not really based on NFL production, but like 60 touchdowns throwing in a season is something we will probably never see again. I think maybe the next closest guy could be Caleb Williams, but like I don't see that with the weapons he has. Granted, it helped Burrow to have all these weapons, but I think it shows now that having those weapons it wasn't because of those weapons. He
Hmm.
is still one of the best quarterbacks in football right now. He was the best quarterback in college football at that time. And that team truly dominated everybody. It was usually when you watch an LSU Bama game, it's like, okay, well, here comes Bama to pound LSU by 20. But the second Joe Burrow got there, that flipped. And LSU has been on Bama's throat ever since. Even once he's left, they have been on Bama's throat, it seems, at times. Granted, Bryce Young kind of ended that, but at times, LSU was at Bama's throat once Burrow left. And he put that team, I think, back on the map after Zach Mettenberger was probably the last
Yeah,
quarterback that was like decent at LSU.
the Odell Tyrann Mathieu years.
Yeah. Like he put LSU football back on the map in the SEC, and it was truly incredible.
Yeah, and resurged the entire program
Exactly.
from start to finish. And it's probably the reason, honestly, they have Brian Kelly there now.
Oh yeah.
And
Swag dad himself.
they actually seem like somewhat of a formidable program again. So, yeah, just an absurd season. Two was Vince Young. I don't have much to say about Vince Young. I believe they won the Rose Bowl. Was it '05 or '06? Which one was it? The national championship game.
I think 05.
Was it '05 against USC? Um,
That is the greatest college football game of all time. And I don't think anything will come close to that.
I need to go back and watch it. I don't think is it on YouTube?
I'm sure it is.
Okay, I'll
You
go
just need to
back
watch
and
the
watch
fourth
it.
quarter.
Yeah. And I know the Vince Young like reach across the pylon um and on the last play of the game. It's probably the most iconic play in college football history. Um it's right up there with the Iron Bowl uh field goal return touchdown. And yeah, I think the other guys I was mentioning before Cam with like the physicality at quarterback was Young and Tebow, who are 1 and 2 on my list. Vince Young was just he was a prodigy. He was something that, and we're gonna say it over and over again, that college football really hadn't seen, and he was at such a historic program at Texas. It vaulted him to this absurd stage that no one really had ever been at that point. And USC was the program at that time, and he
Oh
walks
yeah.
into their building and beats them um, for the national championship against that Pete Carroll team. They had Reggie Bush, Matt Leinart, like Lendale White. They were freaking loaded, and just to overcome that team by being basically most of their offense, um, yeah, clutch, smart, athletic, fast, and a winner, which is what we're going to talk about all the time. That's how you define legacies, is if you win or not.
Exactly. Yeah, I think for me, the hype of that game was something you'll never see again. I think you have the best team in college football at the time in USC, and you had the up and coming team in Texas. And what better stage to do that than in Pasadena, California, which, speaking from experience, is an incredible venue. Um, I just and the number like the stage has never been brighter. I don't think there will ever be a stage that bright. The number of celebrities that were at that game, literally anyone that lived in California and gave a crap about USC was at that game. And the one dude for Texas was Matthew McConaughey. And I will never forget Matthew McConaughey on the Texas sideline once Vince Young scored. some of the purest joy you'll ever see out of a college football fan, and he just happens to be one of the best actors ever, best catchphrases ever. But Vince Young was, I think, was the dog before the dogs. He was feisty. He was just something different. Again, hadn't seen it up to that point in college football, and frankly, it's so hard to be like, oh, we'll never see that again. I think the magnitude of what Vince Young did that last year at Texas may not be matched again. You can compare it to Burrow, but I just think the way Vince Young did it was so much more special. Played the best team of that era and had the best players of that era. And really, what he did in that Rose Bowl game catapulted Texas. That's how they got a Colt McCoy to then lead them after Vince Young was done. So you talk about trendsetters, man. Vince Young has to be up there, and that's why he's at number 2 on our list.
Definitely. And then number 1, Tebow. It had to be Tebow. It was always Tebow. That was actually the first name I wrote down
Oh
when
yeah,
doing this whole thing. Um, Talk about having the intangibles as a quarterback, a leader, someone who is just tenacious, determined, um, gritty. I know all these things are like all the intangibles that get memed a lot, um, but then you take that away and you just look at his play on the field, and he was a force to be reckoned with. At that size, at the quarterback again, under that Urban Meyer offense, and just the things that he had to control around him, like with the
that
Aaron
team.
Hernandez stuff, the Pouncey twins, yeah, just that team in general. Granted,
There's
they were loaded, they were stacked to the rafters, but just having to lead that team back-to-back years for 2 straight national championships was just insane. And I was hitting the knee every time I scored a touchdown in recess when I was
oh
8.
of yeah, and like there's a reason they're making a Netflix documentary about this team. It's just because of how dynamic every personality was. Again, you have those Pouncey twins that were just some of the roughest, toughest dudes you'll ever meet, and they showed that in the NFL. Of course, you had Aaron Hernandez with all his stuff, and then to lead that pack is Urban Meyer as the coach,
Hmm.
and then you have this calm, cool, collected, Christ following, doesn't say a swear word at
Winner.
quarterback, and they just won. He
Hmm.
he was he was a winner. I mean, he's the best probably left-handed thrower of a football. We will see. I know Vic was a great thrower, but like for throwing the football, oof, oof. And it's not like they were playing cupcake teams. They were in the SEC. They had to win and they had to compete. And the reason they did, I always felt like was because of Tim Tebow. And Urban Meyer left Utah to go to Florida, so I don't like Urban Meyer that much, but that team is something special. Again, I cannot wait till that documentary is out about this team. I think that'll only, I think, elevate the perception of what Tim Tebow had to deal with and what he handled with that team, and just how much production that team produced over time.
Yeah. And I think when you look at Tebow, um, he kind of reminds me, he's kind of like the Christian Laettner to me of college football. Um, Granted, there's the 30 for 30 called I Hate Christian Laettner. I totally agree with that statement, but just the resume is unmatched. I mean, you look at Leitner, 4 Final Fours, 2 national championships. You look at Tebow, 2 national championships. Did they even lose a game in those 2 years? I think they lost one game in those 2 years. Um, Basically went like 31-1 or something ridiculous, 30-1, something like that. And um, yeah, his resume is untouched by any other college quarterback that you can really think of. Has the Heisman, is a winner, has the national championships, and has the play to back it up. He was the heart and soul of those teams, so nothing can take that away from him.
Well, heck yeah,
Yeah,
there we go. I liked
yeah,
it.
I did too. I didn't know how it was gonna go for me. Um, it was a ton of fun though. So we have like what, like 10 or 12 of these planned. Just doing the 2000s, we get to, this is nostalgic stuff for us. So, That was a blast. It was a fun list to make, going back and watching all the highlight tapes and stuff like that.
Heck yeah. And now we go to NFL quarterbacks next.
Yeah, so top 10 NFL quarterbacks that we've seen all time. So of course, there's going to be some different guys on here, and we actually get to include guys like Peyton on this list. So that's going to be an absolute blast. That will be coming out later in the week. We're probably going to try and stagger these like Monday, Thursday, Tuesday, Thursday. So what week one, of course, we're doing the quarterbacks. So we're going to do the quarterbacks in the first week, then like running backs the next week, receivers the next week, defensive players the next week, things like that. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the nostalgic trip as much as we did. But yeah, go follow for all the links, all that's in the description. Instagram at Hurdle Podcast, HRDL Podcast. The Spotify's down there. Put Hurdle Sports in the search bar. Mine and Logan's name is on that. So go check that out if you're not checking it out here. And yeah, I think that's it. Billy Logan. Thanks, guys. Peace.